Good evening and welcome to Kunsang Payo Choling. We're so happy to have you join us for another teaching by Jetsunma Ahkon. I do want to apologize for last Sunday. If you tuned in last Sunday and were unable to get to the teaching, we had another event with Kempo teaching and the web stream was unable to be completed due to technical difficulties. So we do have the video of that teaching up on YouTube now, and you're welcome to go see it. I will put the link in the chat in a little bit, so you can do that. But meanwhile, tonight, we have a teaching from 1989 by Jetsunma entitled Meditation and Spiritual Growth. So we'll begin now.
So today's teaching will be about meditation. To some degree, all of the teachings we have ever had here have been about meditation, although it doesn't always seem so. A lot of times we'll talk about deepening within one's practice. A lot of times we'll talk about different forms of chanting and visualization that one will accomplish on this path. A lot of times we'll simply talk about refining one's compassion. Yet, in a very real sense, all of these topics are ultimately about meditation, because this is the method by which the Buddha recommends that we practice in order to achieve realization. One of the greatest difficulties that I think Westerners, and I think most especially Americans, experience is that they have a tremendous diversity in paths that they might choose. The idea of spirituality, the idea of walking a path, the idea of spiritual growth or personal growth even, have become quite popular. They are quite widespread. It is really not the case anymore that it's left to a few people who are involved in the New Age or what have you, that spiritual growth takes place. It has become widespread enough that many people, even people that wouldn't seem to fit the part that we would think they would need to fit, still consider that it's very important to grow on a personal and interpersonal as well as spiritual level. That idea has become all-pervasive. There are many different approaches to this. Many, I think, different confusions about the issue of spirituality. Clearly, there are many definitions of the idea of spirituality. Even though we might think we are all talking about the same subject, if I were to ask even you in this room really what you think spiritual growth is all about, each one of you would have a slightly different slant, and perhaps some of you would have a completely different slant. It's hard to say until we actually get down to actually asking what your ideas are. Some people view spiritual growth as a turn away from materialism and a turn away from the more mundane, ordinary, sometimes the grosser activities that one could become involved with, and becoming somehow more refined, lifting one's awareness from materialism into something that somehow is perceived as more gossamer, more light, more having to do with subtle things. And yet, even then, the spirituality is not defined. No one really knows what that is. No one knows what that means. What might be heavy and gross to one person might be subtle and light to another. And then the idea of spirituality to some people clearly means a kind of psychological, personal expansion, an insightfulness into one's nature. And I mean by that not the nature in the way that the Buddha describes the nature, but more into one's personal nature, one's personal habitual tendencies, why they happen and how they might be changed. One considers spiritual growth perhaps a moving away from simply living mindlessly, eating foods that are no good for us and living lifestyles that are no good for us, and never learning to deal with tension and stress and those kinds of things. And instead, perhaps living a life that is simpler in some ways, more thought through, certainly, more weighed and considered, until it is the kind of lifestyle that brings about personal growth. Certainly, many people consider a very spiritual activity an activity that improves interpersonal relationships. And again, that is based on a very psychological idea. Then there are people that don't think too much about that kind of thing, but think that a spiritual life is a life in which one adapts a certain demeanor, one acts a certain way. You see, one acts spiritual. I'm not sure how one acts spiritual, but some people seem to have that down. And I am poking fun at that a little bit. If you hear that in my voice, you're absolutely right there. They may feel as though to act spiritual, one must have certain expression on their face at least 80 to 85% of the time. And generally, it's with the eyebrows lifted and the eyes looking heavenward or something like that. But they have their own idea. And they may feel that they should be constantly and consistently very passive. They may feel that they should be constantly and consistently playing the role of a knower, one who knows that. Whatever it is, I've seen many people have many different ideas, and some of them are a little silly, and some of them are not too far from the mark. But many people do have the mistaken idea that spirituality is some kind of act, a way that you should be, an act that you should use, in the same way that one puts on one's clothing in the morning. And then there are other people that feel that a spiritual life is one that is dedicated to some particular kind of practice. But even within that, the goal is not very well defined. One of the misfortunes that we have here is that we have such a diversity of different paths, different methods that can be used. And we have never been taught how to achieve the distinction that one has to have, or the discrimination that one has to have in order to distinguish the value of one as opposed to the value of another. We have not learned the guide rules. According to the Buddhist teaching, one absolutely has to understand, in order to determine what a fruitful path is, what the absolute goal is. If you do not understand the goal and have not understood it completely, it will be really impossible to determine a path that works. And according to the Buddhist teaching, there are many things that one might do. One might improve oneself in many ways. One might change in many ways. But in order to achieve the ultimate and permanent cessation of suffering, of discomfort, of compulsion, of negativity, or what have you, whatever you want to call it, of the ultimate cessation of that in any form, one has to achieve supreme enlightenment. That there is no goal that you could achieve that is less than that, that will bring about an ultimate and permanent change. Even if one were to become, through the use of psychological technique, for instance, very stable, very harmonious in a psychological way within oneself. Even though that state might bring a sense of spaciousness or a sense of, well, harmony and inner peace, still we are tied to the wheel of death and rebirth, and cannot avoid death and rebirth, and have no idea what our next incarnation is like. You can suppose or theorize that if you attain some sort of mental stability in this incarnation, that in your next incarnation perhaps the same thing will come about, that somehow you'll be able to take that with you. But actually, none of us knows that for sure. Because there is no person who has achieved absolutely and visibly and provably supreme realization who has returned to us and said, yes, if you attain psychological harmony in this life, then in the next life you'll start off with that. Somehow you will have taken that with you. We don't have that proof. Now the Buddha, however, who did achieve supreme realization and who brought about a path that provided a way for others to achieve supreme realization again and again and again, repeatedly and provably, did say that from death to rebirth, one cannot bring through that state not even so much as a sesame seed, not even something that small. And the teachings are interpreted in such a way as to understand that that meant not only physical objects, that wasn't only a reason for us to not take a great deal of stock in the permanence of our material possessions, but also we are led to understand that many of the things that we spend our lives building, even psychological characteristics, even personality traits, even habitual tendencies, very often, well, actually, more than very often, invariably, these things cannot be taken with us. And yet, according to the Buddha, the clarity, the quality of one's mind stream is a continuum that seems to express itself in the next incarnation. And the karma that one has accumulated, negative and positive, as a reaction to one's perceptions, as a complement or even an exaggeration of one's habitual tendencies. This karma also seems to carry through. But according to the Buddha, it is not possible to take with us even so much as a sesame seed. And so it leads us to wonder whether some of the decisions we've made about spirituality might be short-sighted or might be erroneous. Many of the ideas that we have about spirituality, if examined in the light of the Buddha's teaching that if what we really wish is the release from cyclic death and rebirth, knowing that within cyclic death and rebirth there is always impermanence, there is always the fear of change, there is always the uncertainty of birth and death, and all of the characteristics of cyclic existence are troublesome in their changeability. If we come to understand that and accept because of that the Buddhist teaching that the ultimate goal then must be enlightenment, if we do accept that, then we should examine the teachings that, or the ideas that we have about spirituality next to that and see how they compare. We may find we've been spending a lot of time on practices that truly do not lead to supreme enlightenment. And here again we have to look at what supreme enlightenment is. Because in America we have the idea, a concept that somehow we grow in greatness, you see, and then we become great enough or big enough, and then we are advanced, and then we are, well, I don't know what we think we are, but at some point we think that we are going to become advanced enough to become great enough or big enough to be greater and bigger. Somehow we're having trouble with this. We haven't bounced this around enough to understand what this means precisely. But even those of us that are long-time practitioners, you know, we shake our heads and say, oh no, not me, but yes, you. We are all doing that. We all seem to think that there will be a time and there will be a day when we will be great enough and big enough, and then some kind of event will happen, and then we'll be great and big. And it's funny, because now here in this class we can stand aside and we can look at this and we can think that it's funny. But taking this, now we have to examine our meditation. Those of us that follow the Buddhist teaching, and those of us that are not acquainted with the Buddhist teaching, and the many of us that seem to be following a mixed bag of tricks, a little Buddhist teaching here, a little Hindu teaching here, a little New Age teaching here, a little something else there. Those of us that have made up our own religion, sort of a mix 'em and match 'em. We have to think this through. What is our meditation like? What do we do in our meditation? I have had the occasion to have interviews with many people. People who are Buddhist practitioners and people who are not. People who are newly Buddhist practitioners and people who are old-time practitioners. And it's fascinating to watch them communicate their experiences in meditation, and also simply to ask questions about their meditation. Not meaning to display their prowess or anything like that, but honest, real questions about their meditation. Because many people do not approach meditation correctly at all. Not understanding the supreme goal of enlightenment, not understanding that that goal actually and simply is the awakening to one's own primordial wisdom nature, the awakening to the pristine, empty state. Empty meaning pure of cognition, free of ideation, free of conceptualization. That pristine nature, to awaken to that nature, has no flaw, has no content. That nature results in itself. There's no agenda. There's no predetermination. There is no result other than the nature. And one simply becomes awake, and one tastes one's own true nature. And at that point, one experiences the cessation of conceptualization, the cessation of the things that actually register on the needle, register on the meter. The experience becomes one that simply cannot be described. One has no experience. Because on meditating properly, the moment that you determine you have an experience, that isn't it. You are off the mark. It is simply not that which leads to realization. But the meditations that have been described to me are actually quite odd. There are people that have actually come to me and they have said, I have had many experiences in my meditation, experiences of color, of sound, experiences of vibration, experiences of celestial awareness, and even they have said to me that in that experience I have been told that I am a great being, or I have been told that I am a Rinpoche, or I have been told that I was a Lama in my last life. And then I have had people tell me that in their meditations they're simply always transported, you see, always transported. And they can describe that experience of being transported extremely well, as though they were standing outside of it and really examining it, taking notes so they can bring it back. And they actually describe a frustration that is something like, I have this experience and it's so marvelous, it's so fantastic. Why can't I bring it back with me? Why isn't my ordinary life like that? And I have many people that describe to me really a meditation in which they think that the goal is to sit down and get something. That one should sit down and have a knowing come into one's mind. That one should sit down and, the angels are supposed to speak to us, or one should sit down and we'll be made aware of things that are great and vast. And that somehow that things will come, sit down and try to get something. And I know these people are very sincere. I have no doubt in my mind that these people are sincere. But you see, the difficulty here is that when you are engaged in such a process as that, you are engaged in the process of externalization. It is not essentially different from the experience that you are having right now when you sit in your chair or you sit on your cushion and you look at the teacher who appears to you to be across the room. It is not essentially different from the experience that you have when someone tells you what to buy at the grocery store. In its essence, to receive a message that you are a very advanced being or a very old soul or whatever it is that you have been told in your meditation, or to have an experience of realizing that you are something, or to have an experience in which you are given some vast truth, even though it seems incomprehensibly vast. That experience, although it seems to taste different, is not essentially different from the experience that you're having in your ordinary life, because it is composed of the same things. The mind is in a state of fixation upon self and other, and the duality of that, the division in that. The mind is operating in an automatic way with little or no spaciousness within that process, in which one actually experiences all phenomena, including one's own subtle experiences, including one's own meditative experiences, to be externalized. If that were not true, you could not have that experience. Because when the process of externalization ceases, one merely abides in a state that is called pure cognition. Pure cognition means innate wakefulness or awareness without any conceptualization, even the most subtle, even the most automatic and subtle distinction between one's nature and one's experience. There is no such distinction. One simply abides, poised in this pristine state of
Hang on just a moment.
nor followed. They are simply allowed, like bubbles in a pond, to arise to the surface of the pond, and like bubbles, they do what bubbles do. They go where they go. And they are purely cognized. And then as one practices in that way, true pure cognition then ultimately takes place through the experience of pristine wakefulness, free of all conceptualization. But we, unfortunately, as Americans, as Westerners, and as sentient beings, it's not just us, have this difficulty of having been operating for such a long time in this state of delusion where one automatically and compulsively and instantly and continuously externalizes all phenomena, even one's own thoughts, even one's own feelings. They are also externalized. You see, one can distinguish between oneself and one's feelings. You could not know that you were having a feeling. We are so involved in this process of externalization, so completely involved in it, that we have never had a taste of this pristine moment of pure cognition. It is not that the nature is absent. It is not that one has to grow it. It is not that it's not developed and somehow that it has to get bigger. It is that one cannot recognize it because we are so automatically involved in this process of externalization. It is a compelling process. And unfortunately, we meditate in such a way that we continue the process. I have had meditators, on the other hand, come to me and say, I sit down and I meditate and I follow the rules and I don't have any experience. And I say, you know, you are luckier than the other people that come to me and talk about all these vast experiences that you're having. Good job. Keep on. You're really in good shape. I like that. And then I have had others come to me and say, and this is really a specific instance in which a man came to me and said, I have been following, sadly, he had been doing Vipassana meditation or sitting meditation and had been doing it for some time, and he allowed himself to get completely seduced by experience. Because it is a proper meditation and it does lead to the state that I've just described, but he allowed himself to get seduced by the experience that he was having, in which he suddenly expanded and became as big as the universe and everything was inside of him. And then he became as small as a molecule and he was inside of everything. And he took off with that because that sounded really cosmic to him. And pretty soon he was down the road somewhere in Baltimore with this experience, and he was having it. And boy, when you're having an experience, make no mistake, you are having it. The ego state is very evident, and you are clinging very hard to both the experience and the ego at that time. So he was following that one down the road, and it was very cosmic and very vast, and he described shooting energies going up the spine, and we've heard that that's hot stuff. So whenever we feel that, we go, wow, shooting energy up the spine, that must mean that levitation or something is really near. So we have this energy going up the spine, and suddenly his head is exploding, and and finally I just said, I just sat there and I listened to that, and I said, you are basically lost in the carnival. Somehow the carnival moved through town and you went with it. You have to decide to leave the carnival and come back home and simply sit. And I try to describe that one should take no account of one's experiences. The experience of becoming as big as all that is, and then as small as an atom, should have the same significance to you as the experience that you have when you decide it's time to quit meditating because you'd like to go to the bathroom. They are essentially the same experience. The mind is divided. It is involved in the process of externalization. And that is inconsistent with the poise and the perfect awakening to the pristine nature, that moment of pure conceptualization that is free of all cognition, that allows even whatever stray thought may arise to come and go as it naturally does, without following it, without exaggerating it, without continuing the process of conceptualization, without allowing the mind to remain in that state of externalization. That moment of spaciousness is not the same as that experience that man was having. Now, the Buddha himself, actually, before he went off and meditated by himself for that long time that brought the great benefit that it brought for him, actually studied with many Hindu yogis and went from one to the other, and at the termination of his experience with each one of them said, "Is that all there is?" I don't know if he sang it like that old song, "Is that all there is?" But at any rate, he did say, "Is that really all you have to give me? Is that it?" And the yogi would say, "That's all there is." And he even had that experience of I'm sure he had it differently than this gentleman did. I'm certain of that somehow, but he had a genuine experience of knowing himself to be completely inseparable from all that is, and knowing his nature to be non-dual, and knowing himself to be as vast as the universe, and the universe to be inside of him. And that experience actually is what we in America might call cosmic consciousness. And that experience is very vast, and it has very blissful feelings, and it's very, as I understand it, it can bring feelings that one would have a hard time putting down. It feels, according to what I've heard about it, unbelievable, just completely unbelievable. One has feelings of bliss, one's body feels ecstatic, there is a certain ecstasy that goes with it. And the Buddha accomplished that experience, and then finished that experience, and then went to the yogi that taught it to him and said, "Is that all there is?" And the yogi said, "What are you talking about, is that all there is? That's all I've got. That's everything I've ever known. There's nothing more than that. Clearly, there's nothing more than that." And the Buddha said, because his mind was so pure, he said, "There's more than that. I know that there is something else." And he went and meditated and was able, because of all of the many virtuous deeds that he had done in the past, and all of the many fantastic activities and practices that he had done through aeons and aeons of cyclic existence, was able to accomplish that pristine, non-dual, primordial wisdom state, or rather the awakening to that state, which is beyond small experience and vast, which is beyond bliss and its opposite, perhaps unhappiness, which is beyond any kind of experience which can be determined, and therefore whose opposite is also known. It is the state beyond all of that. And this is the state that we must try to accomplish through our meditation. And obviously, it seems safer and better and altogether the best idea to use the method of one who has accomplished that state, and not to mix it up with someone else who has not. It has become popular to take a little bit of the Buddha's teaching and a little bit of perhaps some, I don't know, indigenous native teaching, and then perhaps a little bit of some Christian teaching and a little bit of this teaching, and mix it all up. And each one of them may be perfectly fine for what they are, but now you have the choice. If you want to achieve the supreme goal, and you know that there is a method that is taught specifically to accomplish that, now you have the choice of taking a boat across this ocean of samsara that either has some holes in it or does not. And basically, at the core, I am an extremely practical person. I may be a spiritual teacher, and that may give people the idea that I'm somehow spiritual, but I'll tell you right now that I'm an extremely level-headed and practical person. And what I know is if I'm going to take a boat across an ocean, I'm going to take one without holes. That just seems logical to me. And from that point of view, this is the path that I practice. So when you engage in meditation, I hope that you will think these things through. You should think through the goal of supreme realization, the state in which one's mind is not involved in duality any longer and in the process of externalization, so that there is no ground or material through which any form of suffering can take place. But instead, one should remain awake to the pristine primordial nature, even as the Buddha has achieved that state of Buddhahood. And if it is that state of Buddhahood that we wish to achieve, then we should examine the method of meditation that we use. Is it proper? Are we being encouraged to have experiences? And even if we are following the Buddha's teaching, are we looking for experiences? Are we looking for some kind of celestial doodah to call our very own? Some kind of warm fuzzy, meditatively speaking, that we can cuddle at night and say we are doing well? Are we following a method that requires that the angels play the Hallelujah chorus for us, or perhaps the great masters speak to us, or whatever? If we are, there is a very real danger that in our meditation we are actually continuing the very experience that the Buddha called samsara. It is a process of externalization. It is a process of duality. And it is essentially the same as the very process that we are involved in our ordinary lives and ordinary circumstances. So please do consider that when you do your meditation, whatever your meditation is. As an aside, the meditation that would be taught here at the Venerable Kongtrul Rinpoche's visit is a meditation that is useful for all people, Buddhist or non-Buddhist. It is a simple meditation of calm abiding that teaches us to rest in the natural state. And to do that in a progressive way, one develops the skill, one trains the mind, and then ultimately one can realize something of the pristine primordial nature. And it is a very simple meditation. It's the simplest of all, and for many practitioners, the very favorite. So I hope that you will consider learning how to do that. And in one way, this class is a preparation for that kind of practice. And I hope that you will take it as your own.
Juling
So thank you so very much for coming and enjoying this teaching with us. I'm sorry for the internet hiccup there in the middle, but you didn't lose anything, I don't believe. In any case, we show these teachings twice a week on Wednesday evenings, as you are now at 7:30, and Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. So the next teaching will be next Sunday at 11. In addition, you have opportunities to practice this meditation that she was talking about, and that is Saturday and Sunday mornings at 10, also on YouTube, where you are now. And it's taught by one of our nuns, and I hope you enjoy it. Come and try it. It's geared for anyone from beginning to, someone who's got a lot more skill in meditating, but basically they will, she will go over the basics of how, the postures and how to do it, so that you can do it and have some people to practice with you online. In addition, we do Medicine Buddha on Facebook every evening at 7 p.m. And that's a very short 15-minute teaching, practice, mainly in English, but with some Tibetan, and the mantra is in Sanskrit. So that Jetsunma has condensed for this time, during the pandemic, and with all of the attending other sicknesses and things that have happened with people. We're just in that kind of time right now, and so there's a lot of people are suffering or know someone who is, and this is an opportunity to make prayers for them, to put them in the chat, to be with other people during that time. And you are welcome to join in anytime, every evening, 7 p.m. on Facebook. In addition, we have daily soaks, which is a food offering ceremony guaranteed to increase merit, and it's all chanted primarily in Tibetan in this case. But you are welcome to join, and we put in dedications during that ceremony, so that people who've put requests for prayers into our website, tara.org, or people who have requested them here at the temple, or so many different ways we get requests, and those all go into these practices and are then amplified by all the people who are praying at that time. They are generally, let me see, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 5:30. It's basically Monday through Friday at 5:30, except Tuesday at 4. Currently, right now, Saturday at noon, and Sunday at 2. And you can find out all that information on our Google Calendar, which is on our website. Tara.org is our website, and you can go there and look at the calendar and click on the event, and it will tell you how to get there, where it's being shown, and what practice you might need to join in. So you're most welcome to join us at any time. With all of that going on, and we also invite you to email kpc@tara.org if you have any questions, or just want to get in touch with people or find out more about the temple. We also offer the opportunity, should you wish to make an offering to Jetsunma directly, you can go through her PayPal account, which is jetsunmagift@gmail.com, and that's in the chat. So it's jetsunmagift@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can also go to to tara.org website, and get a lot of other information about ways to donate to the temple and that sort of thing. So thank you all. Grateful to have you with us. Come anytime, and please be welcome to come to KPC. The outside is open dawn to dusk every day, rain or shine. There are stupas, there are statues, there are wonderful meditation spots. There's altar out front. There's places to make offerings. We're still uncertain about opening the inside just yet. I just haven't heard any new news yet. So We really are all hoping that that happens soon, so you can come into the temple space. But right now, it's an outdoor event, and fortunately, we have a lot of it. So please come in and join us outside. Thank you so much. We'll see you on Sunday, if not before. Thanks.